Hello, everybody, and it's Dave here at Roast to Freedom. Just wanted to talk to you a little bit about today about some of the typical problems associated with the older runner. Um, so, just first of all, to enumerate some of the problems that older runners face, and this isn't to say that this is inevitable or typical necessarily, but quite often it is the case that older runners suffer from these problems. We'll talk later about how we can deal with some of these issues, but let's just make a list first of all. And the first thing I've got at the top of my list is that older runners are considered to be more likely to be slower, to have stiffer joints than younger runners, to have tighter muscles, to get injured more frequently, to fatigue more quickly, and also to recover less quickly. The second problem that older runners face is that society has this kind of expectation that older runners will inevitably they probably shouldn't be running at all. They're going to do themselves more harm than good. They're going to wear out their joints, etc., etc. That as we get old, we should take things easy. That's kind of the general view. We also live in a culture where we regard medication as the answer to all our problems. You know, when the magic drug is discovered, everything will be hunky-dory. If we could discover enough drugs, then everybody will function as perfect human beings. So I'm not saying that medication's not sometimes necessary, but we tend to have this expectation that medication will make things better, will make us better, and this is not always the case, in my view. We also live in a society where we expect quick fixes. Okay, so we tend to think, especially as we get older, that we can quickly fix a problem, whether it be problems of every kind, really, but physical problems, we just pop to the doctor, get a painkiller, pop to the physio, get a specific exercise, and then the machine will be working optimally again. But those of you who know me will know that I don't really believe that we are like machines. This is a product of the Industrial Revolution, I suspect, and a way of thinking that is not really in tune with how the body actually really works. Another thing with older runners is that they tend to be in very habitual patterns. So they're very much. So we're all habitual creatures, but as we get older, the habits tend to become more and more deeply ingrained. Whether they be nutritional habits, whether they be movement patterns that we've got into. Okay. So, for example, we get an injury and then we compensate for that injury because we don't want to put weight on a certain part of our body because it's painful. And then we just stay in that pattern because it's become a habit. And it may be that we're actually very unbalanced in that position, that we're only using one side of our body, and all kinds of postural adaptations occur around that. And this is particularly true as we get older. Obviously, those habits become more and more deeply ingrained and more problematic to deal with, perhaps. So certainly those biomechanical and postural issues are a problem, often with older runners. And very often, because they've done it for so long, that they just think it's their natural way of moving, that there's no option. So it's giving them new options might be useful. We mentioned nutrition, so older runners tend very often to have swallowed the traditional advice, quite literally, to consume a diet high in processed carbohydrates, grains, etc. And this is not always the best option for performance, nor for good health or good tissues, elastic tissues. Older people tend to be very dehydrated as well, so this will also affect the elasticity of the tissues because they need to be able to slide freely, and we need to be able to lubricate the joints, etc. A lot of older people suffer with sleep issues, I've noticed. People beyond a certain age seem to find it very hard to get a good night's sleep for 7 or 8 hours. And so this sleep deprivation adds up over time and will cause health issues, cause underperformance as well, of course. What else? So older female runners, particularly when they get to a certain age, they suffer with a lot of hormonal issues around the menopause. It's not the place to go into that now, but we just recognise that that can make them want to crave the wrong foods, become overweight, and obviously not perform at their best. So there's a lot of hormonal stuff going on there, not just with women, of course, but they have particular hormonal issues that men don't necessarily have to cope or don't have to cope with. So we can't ignore that. Older women particularly also suffer very often from osteoporosis, and actually getting people to run where it's safe to do so can increase their or improve their bone density, or maintain at least their bone density. So it's not inevitable that everything wastes away as we get older, until finally everything breaks apart. So impact activities like running and jumping will support that process of maintaining bone density as long as possible. So it's not just about the foods you eat, but exercise, particularly impact activity, to build stronger bones. The other thing is that we tend to get very set in our ways of exercising and tend not to think outside the box. So we tend to do what we're comfortable with. And older people, because they've been doing probably it for longer very often, are stuck in these comfortable ways of exercising. So they only walk, they only run, perhaps. But we need to use our bodies in lots of different ways, just like we need to use our brains in lots of different ways. Because as soon as we stop challenging our bodies appropriately and our brains appropriately, then they start to die out. All those new connections that we could be making, we're not making. And we're just becoming more and more deeply ingrained in our patterns of movement and behaviour and thought, which is a process of decay, basically. And then so ultimately you get to the point where you're just sitting lifeless in front of a TV set with a remote control in your hand. And, without movement there is no life, whether it be physical movement or movement towards something in your head. We need to be moving somewhere, because if we're not moving somewhere, we're surely going to waste away and eventually die. So lots of different movement patterns. Not just going to the gym and going on the same old cardio machine, not just running, not just walking, not just sitting on a weights bench, but getting up and down off the ground, being able to reach up, being able to push and pull and twist, rotate the body, use your feet properly. All of these things, we tend to, if we don't cultivate them as we get older, we tend to lose them eventually. So I think those are some of the main problems that older people particularly face, and those problems are by no means limited to the older population. In fact, we see people growing older, younger and younger in many ways, despite all the medical advances. Anyway, so that's it for now. If you'd like to find out more about what you can do as an older person, and particularly an older runner, to address some of these issues, then I will be posting more videos, but do feel free to subscribe to the channel, like my videos, and by all means contact me at Road to Freedom as well. So that's it for now, and take care.